Thrush of the New York Times reports, earlier in the day, Democrats, including some prominent African Americans, confronted Speaker Nancy Pelosi at a testy, closed-door meeting, demanding to know why they were being pushed to pass the resolution when bigoted comments by Republicans have gone unchallenged. Representative Ayanna Pressley, Democrat of Massachusetts, said she told leadership that there must be equity in our outrage, noting that Ms. Omar, a Minnesotan and one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, was being attacked for her faith. Islamophobia needs to be included in the anti-Semitism resolution, she told reporters on Wednesday. We need to denounce all forms of hate. There is no hierarchy of hurt. What would be the appropriate level of punishment? A public flogging? Representative Raul Grijalva of Arizona, the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, asked in an interview after the meeting. We're all responsible for what we say, and there are consequences whether it is this resolution or something else, Mr. Grijalva said. But there is a double standard we have to be aware of. The level of condemnation on Ms. Omar has been really intense. So this tells me that maybe it's the case that they're starting to get it, at least a little bit. Because after Republicans repeatedly do these types of things, you have Kevin McCarthy denouncing Ilhan Omar, but putting out a tweet where he singled out 3 Jewish billionaires getting away from all of this unscathed. You have Donald Trump not unequivocally condemning neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville, saying there were very fine people on both sides, feigning outrage about this, and tweeting, quote, "It is shameful that House Democrats won't take a stronger stand against anti-Semitism in their conference. Anti-Semitism has fueled atrocities throughout history, and it's inconceivable they will not act to condemn it." You have tweets like that from Donald Trump, who endorsed a pedophile, Roy Moore. You have members of the Republican Party, Steve King, who are actual white supremacists, questioning why it's controversial. I mean, do we have to go on? The President of the United States, he called for a total and complete shutdown on Muslims entering and exiting the country. The Republican Party is supporting Donald Trump in his effort to ban transgender troops from serving in the military. The Republican Party is speaking out on behalf of religious bigots who own bakeries, for example, and businesses that want to discriminate against members of the LGBTQ community. The Republican Party says nothing about violence against trans women, especially trans women of color, so they're allowed to be openly bigoted. And nobody really bats an eye at that. But now, when Ilhan Omar says one thing that's perceived as anti-Semitic, when in fact it is not, when Jewish leaders like Bernie Sanders came to her defense, all of a sudden the Democratic Party is expected to dogpile on her? No, that's complete bullshit. And it's about time that the Democratic Party is finally being made aware of this double standard. The Republican Party can be as hypocritical as they want to be, and there'll be no repercussions ever. And it's about time that Democratic leadership of all people finally recognize this. It's about time that they stop falling for the Republican Party's attempts to pit the Democratic Party leadership against their own members who are actually popular, who are actually fighting for the American people. So to see people like Ayanna Pressley put pressure on Nancy Pelosi and call out this double standard, I'm feeling a little bit more encouraged. I will say that, because at the beginning of this week, I know myself and other progressives just felt demoralized, because it's like, if we can't have an honest and open discussion about war crimes and modern-day apartheid and genocide being carried out by a country without being called anti-Semitic, Palestinians never have a chance at escaping oppression if this is what's going to happen, because America is one of the few countries who actually could make a difference here if we wanted to. So it is encouraging to see this, and Nancy Pelosi, not only is she kind of backing off now, but she even defended Ilhan Omar, albeit in a tepid way that's not entirely agreeable, but nonetheless, she's definitely walking back her initial condemnation. So as Mike Lillis of The Hill reports, She says, "I don't think that the Congresswoman perhaps appreciates the full weight of how it was heard by other people, although I don't believe it was intended in an anti-Semitic way," Pelosi told reporters at the Capitol. "But the fact is, if that's how it was interpreted, we have to remove all doubt." So it is important to acknowledge that the discussion has progressed in a positive way, because if you'll recall, at the beginning of the week, they were talking about whether or not they would name her, and now they've ruled that out, and now they're expanding the rebuke to include other.
Ilhan Omar, D. Minnesota, has been the center of a controversy over her language about Israel. House Democrats decided to plan a vote on an anti-Semitism resolution in response. Now Speaker Pelosi is saying that she doesn't believe the Congresswoman is anti-Semitic. Appearing in a press conference, Pelosi downplayed Omar's words as those of an activist like she once was, not a congresswoman. Last month, Omar's statements at a panel on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict stirred up the controversy. "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay to push for allegiance to a foreign country," Omar said as part of a discussion about past anti-Semitism allegations lobbed at her. House Democrats responded with the resolution that reads as a rebuke of Omar for possibly playing into anti-Semitic tropes about Jewish attachments to Israel, making them disloyal to the United States, according to Vox. Omar had her defenders, who claimed she was unfairly attacked as a Muslim woman of color daring to be critical of Israel. Is it a case of Islamophobia or of anti-Semitism? Was Omar singled out unfairly when the Republican standard for bigoted remarks seems so much lower than the Democrats? Republicans in the West Virginia legislature put up a viciously Islamophobic poster connecting Omar to the 9/11's hijackers, without nearly as much fanfare as Omar's comparatively tame comments. Omar's tweets from 2012 have also come back to bite her, since they seem to similarly feed into anti-Semitic tropes. One of the tweets stated, "Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel." Omar apologized for this tweet after taking office in January. But then in February, she tweeted another questionable statement, saying that support for Israel in Congress is all about the Benjamins. The Democratic leadership publicly condemned her comment, which again seemed to play into anti-Semitic tropes and a conspiracy theory. Once more, Omar apologized, but today the controversy is at a fever pitch due to the use of her charged language on a sensitive point. Was Omar anti-Semitic, or was she really trying to express a valid point of view that she is quickly judged as a Muslim who wants to express her pro-Palestine positions? Pelosi's response indicates she is inclined to be sensitive to Omar's position. She does not believe the Congresswoman understood how her words would impact people now that she has crossed the threshold into a position of power in Congress. When you're a Congresswoman, you're an advocate out there, as I was. So I appreciate all the enthusiasm that comes in. That was me carrying a stroller and carrying those signs, said Pelosi with her hand held up. So I understand how advocates come in with their enthusiasms, but when you cross that threshold into Congress, your words weigh much more than when you are shouting it at somebody outside, she continued. And I feel confident that her words were not based on
under the Affordable Care Act. So I say to them, come in with your ideas, but understand that we're either going to have to improve Medicare for all, including seniors, or else people are not going to get what they think they're going to get. And by the way, how's it going to be paid for?
Okay, so first thing right off the bat, told you, she's not for single payer, she's not for Medicare for all. The most obvious thing in the world, the only people who deny it is everyone in Washington. She'll tell you, I'm not going to pay for it. I'm not going to do it. And she'll say on top a Republican talking point about how are you going to pay for it. People will be like, oh, no, you progressives. There's no pleasing you. Mm-hmm. Wait, we want Medicare for all. She doesn't. So why should I agree with her? I don't they're like, what? Hey, you're all on the same team. No, we're not. I know you think teams in Washington, they think teams as in Republicans and Democrats, who cares what they stand for? Who cares what legislation they push? Policy, principles. That's a joke, right? No, it's not a joke to us. I don't care about Democrats except for policy. Why else would I care about Democrats? They're not my uncle, right?
The most offensive thing about this entire process is that people briefly tried to have a conversation about alternatives to her, even briefly, and didn't just give her the position. That offended me.
Yeah. They say that.
They say what we were talking about at the time, and like AOC and and Rashida and them, the ones who aren't, I believe Rashida was part of that list, weren't immediately bowing down to her. That's just disrespectful. You should really know your role. You should move into the House and then wait 10 to 20 years before ever rocking the boat, even slightly.
And make sure that your role is to disagree with your own policy positions and the ones that got you elected. Okay?
Yep.
So now other parts of that, she said, oh, this is going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, Affordable Care Act is run through private insurance. It would, quote unquote, get rid of the Affordable Care Act because you wouldn't need it at all, because you would have complete coverage.
Yeah.
So now she says, oh, no, it's not as good as the Affordable Care Act. What are you talking about? Have you read the bill? Now, if you're talking about Medicare, okay, then you could say Medicare doesn't have dental. But Medicare for All, the bill that Bernie Sanders introduced and so many others back, and the one that Jayapal is championing in the House, does have dental, does have all that coverage.
Yeah, but how would the Speaker of the House know that?
I mean, golly gee, she'd have to read the bill, I suppose. So, and then the other part of it that she's leaving out is, under the Affordable Care Act,